Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. This time, we're tackling something everyone thinks about, success.
That's right.
And we're going deep with the work of Dr. Jose Antonio Cisneros. He's really spent years, going deep on this idea of what it means to make it. And not just those, big moments,
Yeah.
but the whole journey and how the idea of success
Yeah.
changes throughout life.
It is so interesting how we think about success. It's one big thing, right? There's this destination.
You made it.
But Dr. Cisneros really pushes us to see it more as he uses the analogy of climbing a mountain.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the view changes as you go up. Even what the top looks like changes.
So it's not about arriving, but the climb itself.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing maybe what you thought you wanted isn't what you thought. Okay, so let's get into it. What does success even mean, according to Dr. Cisneros?
Well, he makes this really interesting distinction that there's the objective side of success. The stuff you can point to.
I got the promotion, I hit this milestone.
Exactly, those external things.
Yeah.
But then there's the subjective side.
Okay.
That feeling of satisfaction.
Are you actually happy?
Yeah. Are you doing what matters to you?
Does it align with your values?
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just get the dream job if you're miserable doing it.
Right. It's only half the picture.
This is really making me think. So is Dr. Cisneros saying there's this whole inner world to success that we don't always talk about?
Absolutely. And he goes even deeper into the word success itself. It comes from the Latin word exitus, which just means result or outcome.
Interesting.
No judgment attached, just what happened because of something.
So like the ancient Romans, when they talked about Exodus, they weren't thinking about mansions and sports cars.
I'm not quite. That's much more of a modern idea. Dr. Cisneros takes us through history to show how success has been shaped by so many things, like culture, religion, all of it.
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Because success for a medieval knight probably looked way different than success, tech entrepreneur today.
Oh, absolutely. In ancient civilizations, success was often about fulfilling a divine purpose. Think of the Greek heroes.
Right, they had to appease the gods.
Yes, their triumphs were about fulfilling their destiny, earning glory in the eyes of the gods.
It's like a whole different world compared to how we think about success now, which often feels so individualistic, materialistic.
You're right. And then as Christianity rose in the Middle Ages, success became about spiritual salvation.
So less focus on earthly riches.
Yes, piety and the afterlife were key.
So not climbing the corporate ladder, but making sure you get into heaven.
You could say that. Then with the Renaissance, we see this shift towards celebrating individual achievement in art intellect and the beginning of what we'd recognize as economic success.
So this is where we start to see the seeds of our modern obsession with making it big.
You could definitely argue that. And then, of course, the 20th and 21st centuries, the American dream takes center stage.
Right, with material wealth and climbing the ladder.
Exactly.
And we can't forget social media.
Right, of course.
Success has become so public, so visual. It's all about curating that image of I've made it.
Absolutely.
Which all leads to a big question for all of us listening.
Yeah.
What does success feel like to you? Is it about that external validation or something deeper? And on top of that, Dr. Cisneros argues that our idea of success actually changes as we change. What we're striving for at 20 looks different at 50.
Precisely. Our priorities and values evolve as we move through life.
You're back to that mountain climb analogy. What we see as the peak, it all shifts.
Exactly. For example, in adolescence, success is all about the future. Fitting in with your peers, maybe pleasing your parents.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days. What am I going to be? Are my friends impressed?
Right. But then as we enter young adulthood, it shifts to building an identity,
right.
A career, becoming independent relationships, making visible progress towards those goals.
So less daydreaming, more concrete milestones, like graduation, the first real job.
Exactly, the markers of adulting. Then as we move into mature adulthood, there's often another shift towards finding balance.
So not just climbing the ladder, but also building a life outside work.
Precisely. Finding harmony between achievements and values. Dr. Cisneros even says many people start to think about making a positive impact on the world, not just themselves.
So it's less about me.
Yeah.
And more about how can I contribute to something bigger?
Yes. And then as we move into older adulthood, we start reflecting on what we've accomplished, the legacy we're leaving, the relationships that matter most.
So it's less about the next promotion More about the journey and the impact we've had.
Exactly. It becomes about looking back with satisfaction, maybe sharing wisdom with younger generations. And finally, in the elderly stage, success often boils down to finding joy in simple things, cherishing memories, those close bonds that bring meaning.
It's a beautiful way of looking at it, isn't it? Success becomes less about external achievements and more about what we've gathered along the way.
It really is. And remember, Dr. Cisneros isn't saying everyone follows this exact path. It's a framework for understanding how our priorities change. It's an invitation to think about where you are in this journey.
I love that. Permission to define success on our own terms. Recognizing it's an evolving journey, not a fixed destination. But he also gives us something concrete, right? Like a recipe for success. The ingredients he's seen in the lives of people who achieve their goals.
Exactly. And these are valuable whether you're going for a career change, a personal project, even just figuring out what success means to you right now.
So let's dive into those ingredients. What's the first one Dr. Cisneros highlights, and how can our listeners start using it?
So the first ingredient Dr. Cisneros talks about is planning and having a strategy.
So more than just like a to-do list.
Yeah, it's like having a roadmap for where you want to go.
Okay, I'm listening.
He actually uses this phrase in Spanish, diseño estratégico. It means strategic design.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, think of it like you're plotting a course, but you're ready to adjust if the wind changes.
So you need the plan.
Yeah.
But got to be flexible, not get too rigid.
Exactly. And Dr. Cisneros is really big on clarity, too. He says, and I'm quoting here, goals must be clearly defined to avoid wasted effort.
Okay, makes sense.
He even talks about visualizing your success, like really picturing what it would look and feel like to hit that goal.
Oh, I love that. Don't just write down, get promoted, but really imagine yourself in that role. What stands out to you about this in terms of how it connects to Dr. Cisneros' overall view of success?
Well, it's interesting because it brings together that idea of objective and subjective success. You have the objective goal, like the promotion, but by visualizing it, you tap into the feeling of what it would mean.
Ah, so you're aligning those two sides.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the roadmap and the clear vision.
Yeah.
What's the next ingredient on the list?
Well, this one might not be a surprise, but it's effort and persistence.
Yeah, no shortcuts, right?
Nope. Dr. Cisneros says, and again, I'm quoting here, success is not an accident. It's the result of sustained effort and constant focus.
Got to put in the work.
You do, but it's not about just brute force. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you, something sustainable.
So not burning yourself out, but finding a pace you can actually keep up.
Exactly. And he even talks about turning effort into positive routines, building habits that support your goals. That's where the diseño estratégico comes in.
Ah, I see what you mean. If you've got the plan and you've broken things down, the effort feels less overwhelming.
Right. It's more like a series of smaller wins.
And he also uses the phrase acción consistente.
Which means consistent action.
So it's taking those steps day after day, even when you don't feel like it.
Exactly. And that's where I think a lot of people get tripped up. Easy to be excited at the beginning, but it's the consistency that matters.
And I bet this ties into Dr. Cisneros' idea of success being a journey.
Absolutely. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And that leads us to the next ingredient, passion and purpose.
Okay, so this is where we connect our goals to what really matters to us.
Yes, it's about finding that internal drive, not just going through the motions.
I'm with you.
Dr. Cisneros emphasizes that when your goals reflect your values, the effort becomes so much more meaningful.
You're not just working towards something. You're actually living in line with who you are.
Exactly. It goes back to that internal sense of fulfillment.
We're hitting all the key points here.
And he even talks about amar el proceso, which means loving the process.
So it's finding the joy in the journey itself.
Exactly, not just the end result.
I think that's such a big one. We get so caught up in the destination
Yeah.
that we forget to enjoy the ride.
Right, but if you're passionate about what you're doing, the effort itself becomes the reward.
Powerful stuff. So what's next?
The next ingredient is knowledge and preparation.
Okay, so time to hit the books.
Well, education is part of it, but Dr. Cisneros takes a wider view. He talks about aprendizaje constante, which means continuous learning.
I like that.
It's not just formal education, but being a lifelong learner.
So always be curious, be open to new information.
Exactly. And he also talks about experimentation, which means experimentation.
Okay, so trying new things even if they don't work out.
Yes, stepping out of your comfort zone and learning from it all.
He's encouraging us to embrace that growth mindset.
Precisely believing that you can always learn and improve. And part of that is finding mentors, people who can guide you and offer insights.
It's like having that experienced guide on the mountain climb. someone who knows the terrain.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the plan, the effort, the passion, the knowledge. What else is in Dr. Cisneros' recipe?
This next one is so important and I think often overlooked. It's emotional strength.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He calls it resiliencia emotional, which means emotional resilience.
So being able to bounce back from setbacks.
Yes, managing stress, staying focused even when things are tough.
That's a big one for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah,
It's so easy to get discouraged when things don't go your way.
absolutely. And that's why Dr. Cisneros talks about accepting failure as part of the journey. It's not the end, it's a chance to learn.
So you reframe it as a stepping stone.
Exactly. You come back stronger.
You gotta have that grit.
You do. And
Yeah.
here's another key ingredient, building relationships.
So networking, making connection.
It's more than that. It's about having a support system. People who believe in you, encourage you, celebrate with you. He talks about relaciones positivas, positive relationships, and collaboration, which means collaboration.
So it's not just what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly. And having those people who lift you up.
I think we forget how important our relationships are to our success. Okay, so we've got planning effort, passion, knowledge, resilience, relationships. Anything else in this recipe for success?
Oh, there are, and they're just as important as the others. Dr. Cisneros really emphasizes adaptability and growth. Especially in today's world, things are changing so fast.
So you gotta be flexible, able to roll with the punches.
Exactly. He uses the term mentalidad de crecimiento, which means growth mindset.
Okay, I like that.
It's that belief that you can always learn and improve, even when things get tough.
So be open to new ideas, try new approaches.
Yes, and don't be afraid to get out of that comfort zone.
Sometimes I've resisted change and then realized later it was exactly what I needed.
It pushed you to grow.
It sounds like Dr. Cisneros is saying adaptability is key, not just for achieving success, but for evolving as a person.
Exactly. And along with adaptability comes time management, that age-old question of how to make the most of our time.
We've all got the same 24 hours.
Right. But it's how we use them that matters.
So what does Dr. Cisneros say about that?
He talks about being mindful about how we spend our time, making conscious choices about where we put our energy. It goes back to planning and having clear goals.
If you know what you're working towards, it's easier to prioritize.
Exactly. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Not just reacting to what comes at us, but shaping our days.
Precisely, you're in the driver's seat. And finally, Dr. Cisneros highlights two ingredients that are so essential: gratitude and humility.
I feel like those are so important, but we don't talk about them enough.
You're right, especially when we're all caught up in achieving things.
So how does gratitude play into Dr. Cisneros' view of success?
He talks about acknowledging our progress, celebrating wins, expressing gratitude for the people who've helped us along the way.
So staying grounded, appreciating what we have.
Yes, recognizing we don't do it alone.
And humility, how does that fit in?
It's about staying humble, remembering where we came from. We all make mistakes. We all have room to grow. We can always learn from others.
So be open to new perspectives. Remember, success isn't a solo act. Wow, we've covered so much ground today. We've really gone deep into Dr. Cisneros' view of success, how it's both what we achieve and how we feel about it, how it changes over a lifetime, and those key ingredients for getting there. What would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away?
I think Dr. Cisneros offers a really empowering message, that success isn't one size fits all. You have the power to decide what it means for you. It's a journey, not a destination. And it's a journey that's made richer by our values, our relationships, and that commitment to always growing and learning.
I love that it's about living a life that feels meaningful to you. And what's so great is that Dr. Cisneros doesn't just stop at the ideas. He gives us those concrete ingredients we can actually use.
Right? Whether it's clarifying your goals, getting more resilient, nurturing your relationships, embracing that continuous learning. These are things you can start doing today.
And it all starts with that question we talked about. What does success feel like to you? Once you have an answer, you can build your own recipe.
Exactly, drawing on what resonates with you.
And remember, success isn't about being perfect. It's about the journey, learning from it all, and having those people who support you along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the work of Dr. Jose Antonio Cisneros. We hope you found his insights as inspiring as we have. Remember, you have the power to define success for yourself and to create a life that feels truly fulfilling. Until next time, keep diving deep.